So good morning. I'm Ed Pentz, Executive Director of Crossref, and I'm pleased to welcome everybody here today to Crossref Live 17. And also we are live streaming the event, so they're welcome to anybody who's watching the live stream. We've got a great couple of days lined up, and so I hope you enjoy it. You've got your bags with your newspapers, which have the program and some other information, so please take a look at that along with our annual report. But I'm very pleased to welcome you to our first annual meeting in Asia. So thank you all for coming. It's about time, I would say. But the Crossref staff and the board have talked about this for a little while and thought that it would be a great thing to do. Crossref's membership has been expanding globally, and we've always had our meetings either in Boston or London, and this is actually the 18th annual meeting. We started back in 2000. We did have one annual meeting in Frankfurt in 2001 because the Crossref meeting had been scheduled for September 12th in London, and that meeting didn't happen. But with the global nature of Crossref, we decided to come to Singapore, and it's a regional and an international hub. One of our early members, World Scientific, is based here, and so we thought it would be a great location to do this. Singapore itself, though, as a country, has been growing rapidly and putting a lot of money into research and development, and their rankings in the world are going up with its universities. And in the current cycle, there's the government spending $19 billion on research and development. So before I get started, I also wanted to just call everybody's attention to the Code of Conduct, which is in the newspaper as well as on the schedule online. So I encourage everybody to take a look at that. That's another first for having a Code of Conduct. And I think we've got a lot of firsts this meeting. One of the other firsts is that we actually have beanbag chairs for people to sit on. So I think if don't hog the chairs, because a lot of people might want to be sitting on those beanbag chairs. So move around, try out the different seating. So our theme for the conference is metadata plus infrastructure plus relations equals context. And over the next 2 days, we've got a lot of talks on this theme, and so hopefully you'll get an understanding of what this all means. I'm going to kick things off, though, and talk about where Crossref is, some of the things we've been doing this year. But before I get into the specifics and talk about some of the statistics, I wanted to take a step back and ask an important question of why are we here? But don't worry, this isn't the start of a TED Talk. But it's an important question to ask these larger philosophical questions, but we can leave that to the break about humanity's purpose and why we're all here. But I thought about this, and we're here because we want to have an annual meeting in Asia, but also Crossref's a global organization, as I said, but we're more than an organization, we're a community. And it's a community that's involved with and cares about scholarly research and communications. So the Crossref community is publishers, but publishers defined very broadly, so it includes organizations who publish, who don't necessarily think of themselves as publishers. And this is where Crossref roots are, but it also includes a much broader community of universities, research institutions, academic libraries, funders, researchers, and Crossref is really conscious that it wants to engage with that broader community, and so we have representatives from all those types of organizations here today. And so really as a community, it's really important to come together, to talk, network, and exchange information. So that's what we're hoping happens over the next couple of days. So in talking about why Crossref itself exists, one of the reasons we're here is because of Crossref. Over the last couple of years, we've thought a lot about how we talk about what Crossref does, and we've revised our mission statement and come up with a series of a way to encapsulate the Crossref's mission and what we do, and you can see those on these boards around the room. That's how the annual report is organized, and I'm going to organize my talk today around these topics. But first of all, the sort of summary mission statement: Crossref makes scholarly content easy to find, cite, link, and assess. We're a nonprofit membership organization that exists to make scholarly communications better. We rally the community, tag and share metadata, run an open infrastructure, play with technology, and make tools and services, all to help put research outputs in context. So starting with the rally piece, we get the community to get together and we get people working together. As I mentioned, our community has grown a lot and expanded, so we have over 8,200 members around the world. And but we also have organizations who get an account with us or use our systems, and that's even larger number. So that community's really grown. And an important part of Crossref as an organization is the governance. We have a 16-member board of directors, and it's a cross-section of international publishers. And we're a membership association, so there's one member, one vote, and we have board elections each November, and we also have a number of advisory groups and working groups and committees, and we'll talk about some of those a little bit later. But one aspect of this meeting is it's also includes our corporate annual meeting. And that's coming up at the end of the day, and it's the end of the 2017 election. And so this year, the nominating committee put out a call for expressions of interest in serving on the board, and we got 25 submissions. The nominating committee reviewed those and came up with 9 candidates for the 6 seats that are open for election. So out of the 16-member board, every 2 years, 5 of those seats are up, and the third year, the 6 seats go up for election. And this is the slate that we have. Many of the people are here, so it's a really great group of people and organizations, and they would all be great on the board. But out of these 9, there'll be 6, and they'll be confirmed at the end of today. So this is very, very exciting. This is the first time we've had more candidates than there are seats. So a contested election in the past, there's always been the same number of candidates as there are seats. So we have the formal corporate annual meeting at 4:45. We should be able to get back on time during the day, and everybody's strongly encouraged to attend. And it's a critical part of the Crossref's effective and transparent governance. So in terms of rallying the community, the other thing we do is go out and hold events. We've had this last year a series of Crossref Live events over the last year. It's a way to stay in touch with the community, and we've had a couple of meetings in Brazil. We had a webinar in Turkish, and a number of meetings, and we're having the meeting in Indonesia next week. If you map these out on the globe, it shows that we have gotten around the world a little bit this year, and we've got plans, which you'll be hearing about later today, about our international outreach. You can see there's still some areas we could get to: Australia, India, Africa, Middle East. So we've made a start with a broader international engagement and going to be continuing with that. The other way we interact is by working with other organizations. So Crossref is very collaborative. We were actually set up as a collaboration of publishers in order to enable reference linking. And now we work with many other community organizations, other membership associations on different projects and initiatives, and these are listed in the annual report as well, but it just gives a sense of, these are all things that Crossref staff are involved with or serve on various boards. So we have a lot of connections out into the community. I wanted to highlight a couple of things. We'll be hearing about these later today, though. Ginny Hendricks at Crossref launched the Metadata 2020 initiative. Its goal is to highlight the value of better and richer metadata for scholarly communications, but it's not just a Crossref project. So we're going to be hearing about that later today. That's been very exciting this last year. And also, Crossref is involved in the second Pitapalooza meeting that we co-host with the California Digital Library, DataCite, and ORCID. There's some postcards out on the registration desk. The meeting is in January in Girona, Spain, and it's a conference that is devoted to persistent identifiers and people who are interested in persistent identifiers. And the first meeting was in November 2016, and it worked really well. It was in Reykjavik, Iceland, and getting that community together of people interested in persistent identifiers, there was a real sense of a community that came out of that meeting, because usually that group of people who are interested in those things are usually on the sidelines of other meetings. So to have their own meeting was really good. So we're doing it again. So in terms of tagging, structuring, processing, and sharing metadata to reveal relationships between research outputs, we're going to be having a couple of other talks about this issue of relationships during the next 2 days. But of course, this is all around the content that Crossref registers, and that's gone through a lot of changes over the last few years. So this is as of last week, 91.6 million content items, and that's been growing at a very pretty steady rate. You can see from 2002 onwards, this is current content as well as backfile content. A lot of content is getting digitized, and we are rapidly approaching 100 million items. And the types of content that Crossref collects has expanded over the years as well. So here are all the different content types we accept. And then just to highlight, we have the two newest types that we've, over the last 6 months or a year. So preprints, we're accepting DOIs to be assigned to, and metadata to be assigned to preprints. We've created this sort of slightly larger category of posted content, because there may be things like, can be called something different, working papers, those types of things. But, and we've established for preprints that, again, using relationships, that when a published article related to that preprint is published, then the preprint makes a link to it, and also that relationship is captured in the metadata, and that's now starting to happen. And then most recently, peer review reports. A number of publishers are publishing the items associated with the peer review process, the reports themselves, and other things. And those can now be registered with Crossref, and the metadata will establish those relationships between the different types of content. But Crossref started off with journal articles. This is a breakdown of the percentage of the different types of content that you can see here. So it's still obviously mostly journals, but books over the last 5, 6, 7 years has actually been expanding a lot, and the percentage has been going up. We have conference proceeding components and database items. That's really a catch-all that includes lots of different stuff. But and then the other content types are much smaller, so I didn't show those on this graph. But the way the content we register has been expanding really has created a lot of value within the system. So with Run, operating a shared open infrastructure, that's community governs and evolves with changing needs. Again, we'll be hearing about some of the projects in more detail, but I just wanted to highlight some of the statistics in terms of metadata queries. So organizations, many different types of organizations, send metadata to Crossref to find DOIs, or they send DOIs to find metadata. And metadata distribution has grown a huge amount. And if you're looking across all the different Crossref interfaces, the Open REST API, OAI-PMH, simple text query, we have a number of different interfaces, but in October, there were 623 million queries, and that's a 41% increase on the previous year. So that just represents a huge amount of data being distributed and getting out there and getting used. So once getting all the DOIs out there into the world, the DOIs are links, and so we track how many times those links are clicked. And again, in October, we had 205 million DOI resolutions, so that will be, this year, lead to over 2.4 billion, which again represents significant growth on previous years. So with this statistic, we also try, well, in the statistics that Crossref reports, we weed out some crawlers and robot indexers. And the idea here is that we were trying to get to, okay, well, are these, trying to get the number of clicks by humans actually clicking on links. But of course, it's almost impossible to weed out all the automated crawling. And I think we need to think about whether we should be doing that, because now machine access to a lot of these queries are machine access. People are setting up programs to do this, and so the distinction between a human resolving it or a program or an algorithm or whatever following this, the distinction I don't think is as important as maybe it has been in the past. So I think we'll be taking a look at that, because actually if you report the unfiltered resolutions, it's almost double what we're showing here. The Crossref Cited By service, this is publishers deposit, members deposit their references with Crossref, and we tie up what cites what. So there's 696 million relationships of those cited by matches in the system, and that's a big increase on the previous year. And a little later, we have a talk about the Crossref Metadata APIs Plus. This is a new service around our metadata delivery interfaces. And so that's a very exciting development. And the next area is play, engaging in debate and experimenting with technology to solve our members' problems. We, of course, have Crossref Labs, which does many experiments and trying things out. But we also have a couple of initiatives that we've cast under here where we're working on some new things collaboratively with some other organizations. First of all, we've had a major initiative over this last year for organization identifiers. We set up a working group with DataCite and ORCID, and with the participation of, again, the California Digital Library and a number of other organizations. And we talked about this at the annual meeting last year. And in January 2017, we actually set up a working group of interested organizations. And they've worked this year, and just towards the end of this year, last month, they produced a set of recommendations and principles on how best to go about having an open, independent registry of organization identifiers. And the working group also issued a request for information, so asking organizations who are interested in participating in this organization identifier work to express interest in a number of different areas, just being involved maybe in governance, or even helping to, having data that they could donate, or help actually running the registry. And so that is the request for information. Responses were requested by December 1st. So the working group will be taking a look at that, and the Crossref board is going to be discussing this whole issue of organization identifiers on Thursday. So Crossref is planning to continue to stay involved in that, and the goal here again is that we have content identified via Crossref and DataCite and the other registration agencies for DOIs. We have ORCID covering researchers, and the missing piece is organization identifiers. There are existing organization identifiers, but no one that the entire community supports and uses. So that's what we're hoping is going to happen in 2018, that we'll actually get to having a registry up and running. The other thing we've done is we've restarted our funder advisory group. So a number of years ago, we had a funder advisory group that helped us put together what at the time was called FundRef, that is now the Open Funder Registry. And that group hadn't met for a while, but then we started talking with some funders, and there was growing interest in assigning identifiers to grants. And we are looking at the possibility now of assigning DOIs to grants. And there would be a lot of benefit in that. And ORCID is also doing some associated work with the NIH, the National Institutes of Health in the US. You can see a partial list. This is on the website. And that group has had 2 calls so far now. And it's part of our also trying to engage more broadly outside of our traditional publishing membership. And so we've got a really great group of different funders helping us figure out how it might work to have grant identifiers and assign DOIs to them. So in terms of Make, we create tools and services to enable connections and give context. And so over the last year, this has involved improving existing services. Metadata Manager, this is going to be an updated way to register content, an improvement on our very basic web deposit form. And again, there's going to be there's going to be a talk about that later. We've had similarity check enhancements during the year, and the Crossref board is actually taking a strategic look at the similarity check service and looking at options there. And we're planning, we've been doing some cross-mark improvements and planning some further ones for 2018. And we've been working on building some new services. Participation reports is one. This is going to provide a dashboard where publishers can see what metadata they're depositing and what metadata they could be depositing to take advantage and submit this richer metadata to Crossref to take full advantage of the different Crossref services. And event data has been a major development. The event data service is in beta now, and we're going to have a talk about that later as well. So the other thing that Crossref has thought about this last year is best practice and policies as well. So of course, we talk about more and better metadata a lot. So I'm going to talk about what that means in just a minute. But at the beginning of this year, we updated the Crossref DOI display guidelines to update and clarify how Crossref DOI should be displayed. And very recently, we've just announced a new reference policy and a change to the membership agreement that's associated with metadata delivery. So there was a blog post about this and an email to members, and so members have they can make a decision about how Crossref distributes their references. So all the metadata that Crossref collects, except the references, is distributed via all the different interfaces we have. With references, members can make a choice of having the references be open, be limited, only sent to those paying via the new APIs Plus service, or set them to be closed, and then they're only used by Crossref for the cited by linking service. So if you have any questions about that, there's a lot of Crossref staff here, so feel free to ask them and discuss it with them. In terms of better metadata, I just wanted to emphasize that Crossref collects the basic metadata. Here, this is the standard bibliographic metadata, but we've been expanding over the years the type of information. So if you are not depositing this information with Crossref, then please consider doing it. So it includes the funding information, the funder identifiers. It includes license information, also full text locations. So URIs to direct to full text articles this enables text and data mining as well. And then also via Crossmark, updates, retractions, and corrections. This is all really important information that if you deposit it with Crossref, it enhances the system for everyone. I also then wanted to touch on the issue of, and then ORCID IDs. I should not forget that. So we've already got a couple of million articles now with ORCID IDs for the authors. A number of publishers have signed a letter that ORCID organized that a group of publishers are requiring ORCID IDs when manuscripts are submitted. They ask for ORCID IDs, but they're actually starting now to require it for at least corresponding authors, and so that's been a development there. So I did just want to touch on this issue of taking advantage of having many Crossref publishers here, of just touching on the issue of why we updated the Crossref DOI display guidelines. And so here, this is very common to see this, and if you look at this and see, yeah, okay, that's all right, it's not all right. That is what we're trying to avoid and move away from. So originally, this was the recommendation for how to display a DOI. So you can see with this DOI, it's just DOI : and back in the late 90s, the hope or the dream was that browsers would recognize that natively, and it would be like FTP or at the time Gopher or all these other things. But that never happened. The browsers never implemented that, and things have moved on from that. So displaying the DOI like this, and it's not a link. It's in order to turn it into a link, you have to cut and paste it and stick the doi.org on the front. And so the updated guidelines were basically to always display the DOI as a full URL. We've also moved to HTTPS, which is where everything is going for security. We also dropped the DX, so you don't need the DX anymore. It just wasn't it wasn't needed, and the shorter the better. And so some of the feedback and comments we got were, well, what if it's on the abstract itself or the article that the DOI is representing? Why make it a link? And the reason to always make it a link is that you can right-click it. It's easy to copy. It's then highlighted as a link, and people always know that it's a link, and it makes it easier to reuse, and it also makes it easier for machines when they're crawling, right? To identify it and know what it is. So always make the DOI a full link, even when it's on the abstract or the full text. Many publishers have started to do this. Many more don't and need to. So check it out. I would encourage you to do that. And so then just to wrap up my talk, Crossref has accomplished a lot over the last year. We're working on a lot of different things. You'll be hearing about more of them. You'll be hearing from other people as well. But the Crossref staff, obviously, none of this is possible except for the Crossref staff. This is in the annual report as well, but I just wanted to highlight we've got a great team, and none of this would happen without them. So just wanted to highlight them and say a big thank you to the Crossref staff. And thank you very much, and I will finish. Thanks. So I think after each session we can take questions. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to. We do have microphones, so if anybody has any questions. Sorry, we have one here and one back there.
Thank you. I just wanted to know two things about cross-reference. Are you a publicly traded company in the US?
So Crossref is a not-for-profit membership association. So we're not-for-profit. We are tax exempt as a 501c6, it's called in the U.S. So we're a membership association. That's our incorporation.
I'm a US think tank as well. Anyway, coming back to the subject, making the references open would help increase our citation, because publishing articles is basically to get more citations, to increase citations. Mm-hmm. And without references, we cannot help increase citations. Mm-hmm. And that's a comment.
Yeah. So we're having a talk about the citations a little later. I think it's tomorrow. But that's an option for publishers. Each publisher makes that decision about how they want their references treated. So, yeah. Richard? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Ed, I'm curious why affiliation isn't listed as basic metadata. Mm-hmm. Even in the advanced aspirational metadata, it's not listed. Could you comment on that? And can we aspire to see that in the future?
That's a good question, asking about affiliations. And so Crossref can collect affiliations. It's in the schema, the deposit schema. And some publishers send it in, but it's just the string of whatever they have in their article. So it's very messy data. And it's definitely our intention to have affiliation in future, and it's tied to the organization identifier. So if we have the organization identifier registry, right now publishers use the Open Funder registry to identify the funders when they deposit with us. If we have the organization ID registry, they can use that to uniquely identify the affiliation, and so when it gets deposited with Crossref, it'll actually have the registry ID. That's the plan for the future.
I'm curious why you might be letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, in that there already is a fully CC0 open grid ID available from Digital Science originally, which has, I think, 65,000 institutions, which will be the lion's share of submitting institutions. Why can't that be a first pass requirement, which is then mapped onto the evolving open organizational identifier as it evolves under community guidelines?
Mm-hmm. Digital Science is participating in the working group, and grid data is sort of under consideration, and they're part of the discussion. So grid is a possibility for using as the basis for an organization identifier. So I think what we're also looking at is the sort of ongoing governance for a registry. So I think grid is a leading candidate for data to use for the registry. Sorry.
Question about the breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of journals, the slide with the graph, journals, books, and other content. Is that for all 80 million or so records in Crossref?
Okay, so the breakdown is for all the 91 million, yeah.
For all the 91 million. I
Yeah.
wonder how different would it be if you looked at the last 6 months or the last year as you add more
Mm-hmm.
support, peer review reports, preprints, and all the other structures. Is that changing, or is that
Mm-hmm.
still around the 2% for the other?
That's a good question, and actually we could look at that, right? We could break it down that way, but you're right that there's a difference between current content and backfile content, and I would say sort of in the journal area, the bulk of the backfile digitization of putting all the older content that's largely been done, not so much say for books, but yeah, if you obviously look at any kind of breakdown of statistics, there's going to be a slightly different profile if you're just looking at, okay, if we look at what was deposited with Crossref that was published in 2017, what that would look like. But yeah, we could break that down, and actually that's something that under some of our new services with the REST API and participation reports that I mentioned that should make it easier to find out that. Mm.